as you'll see, this is the web portal that we can use to generate these transactions. But as I mentioned, if I look at the App Store here, these are free downloads that once you license the application on the web portal, you'll be able to download these mobile applications. And again, they're native to Apple, Android, and iOS and Windows 10, 11. And they're not mutually exclusive to the extent that you can enter a purchase requisition through the portal and then have a manager approve them on their mobile app. Also note that if you're running more than one Sage 300 company, you'll be able to choose from a drop-down list of Sage 300 companies that you would like to raise these purchase requisitions against. And we'll highlight the fact that we do have integration into project and job cost, which is a unique feature of the Norming Resource Manager solution. So as we log in, you notice on the left-hand side a list of functionality. We mentioned that we're going to be focusing on Procure to Pay in this session today. And there's the 3 levels of purchase transaction that we can submit and get approved through the web portal, whether it's PO, PO receipt, or PO invoice, but also the AP invoice. If you're not raising purchase orders for your purchases, you can go straight to the AP invoice requisition. Now within purchase requisition, we've set up 2 different purchase types. You'll notice that there's job related, and if I look at others that are awaiting approval, there's also use budget. So you can create different types of purchase requisitions that have different requirements and different parameters, which will control what users can buy, what vendors they can buy from, and whether there's any other restrictions or additional approval requirements that are needed in order to generate the purchase transaction within Sage 300. So as an example, if I were to use this open PO here 19, which is job related, you'll see that I've got contract, project, category, and cost class as a PJC transaction type. And then I can attach documents to the purchase requisition to support the purchase transaction that I'm trying to make. And we can include quotations. And in this case, the request for quote has 2 different vendors for the same item. And you notice the comment here that one vendor has a price of $56 and they offer the best lead time of 3 days. But our preferred vendor with the blue star is the price of $52, and that is the best price, even though the lead time is 4 days. So depending on your criteria, you can use the request for quote function to determine which vendor you're buying from and document the reason why you bought from that vendor. So this is where the ISO 9000 compliance comes in. Companies that are looking to comply with some of the ISO 9000 standards, such as managing a process or managing activities as a process and prioritizing improvements within those processes, have the opportunity to justify and document their choice of vendor when they're making these purchase decisions. It also helps in relationship management because now you're communicating more effectively with these vendors and documenting the reason why you're buying with them and giving these vendors an opportunity to compete for your business. So these are some of the ways that we can use Resource Manager to comply with some of those regulatory requirements. And in this case, we're looking at a project-based purchase requisition. Now, if we were to look at a different type of requisition, and these are different statuses, by the way. Open means that I've started the purchase requisition, but I haven't submitted it for approval yet. Awaiting approval means that I have submitted it, and now I'm waiting for the managers or supervisors to start approving. And then obviously posted would be transactions where I've got a fully approved purchase requisition, which now has a PO number assigned to it within Sage 300. And that's the process we want to show you today. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at the workflow approval and the strength of that functionality. So you notice here that we have a purchase requisition that has inventory items all from category A1. And if we click on the approval audit trail, we see that Robert is the employee who submitted that requisition, and Freddie is the one who has to do the approval. the system will take a graphical representation of the workflow and flow chart that out for us. So again, we're adding to the documentation capability of Sage 300 to make it a true business management solution, and being able to incorporate decision actions or dependencies with additional business logic that determine how and when these purchase requisitions will get approved. So if you note here, we've got the case where A1 category items are going to be approved by the supervisor, but any other type of non-inventory item must go through the division manager and then back to the supervisor to do the final approval. But in this case, it's only telling us that Freddie has to do the approval because the transaction involves just the A1 type of items. Now, if we move to this requisition here and we look at the approval trail, you notice that Paul, our division manager, has been incorporated as part of the approval workflow because there's a decision criteria that determines the division manager must be involved in this approval process. And why is that? Because there's a non-inventory item, a Jaguar SUV, that's been added into this workflow approval. And how is all of this set up? It's done by, first of all, establishing within the employee register that Robert Embleton is an employee, the supervisor is Freddie, and he's part of Division 100. So because we've said the supervisor must do the approval, that's why Robert's purchases go to Freddie. It will also look to the division, and you notice that division manager is one of the processes. Because Robert is part of Division 100, the system knows that it's Paul as division manager of Division 100 who needs to do the approval when Robert makes a purchase request for a non-inventory item. And this is how we configure the system to build in different types of business logic to be able to incorporate and handle multiple types of purchase requisitions. And notice that there's a link to a web catalog as well to support the purchase transaction. If you're buying from an online catalog, the reviewer or approver can simply click on that link, go to the web catalog, and see the item that's being purchased from that vendor. And if it's a stock item, you notice here that we can create a catalog with pictures so we can see an actual representation of the item that's being purchased. And so that's what we want to take you through today from scratch, is a brand new purchase requisition and how we use the system to enter and approve these purchase entries. So here's the job related, which would show contract, project, category, and cost class. But in our case, we want to do a budget-based purchase requisition. So you can see how the screens dynamically change, which is one of the benefits of using a web-based application. They're very dynamic and give you the capability to change columns. And in fact, you can even change the column headings to use your own nomenclature for recording these purchase transactions. And we're in the web portal, but we're fully integrated with the rest of Sage 300. So we have the ability to be able to record a purchase against any of the vendors that have been set up within Sage 300. And I can click on any vendor and choose a location because I can see inventory locations. But if you're not using inventory control, the system can be configured to use PO items or simply non-inventory items. And then we would come down and look at adding the items we want. And in this case, there's just a subset of items because this purchase type is limited to just these A1 category items. But if there was a long list of inventory items and I didn't know what the item code was, I don't need to worry about that because Resource Manager supports what we call fuzzy logic for data entry. And by that I mean, if I just know the description of what I'm looking to buy, let's say a desk lamp, I start typing in the item number field letters that describe what I'm looking for. And as I enter those letters, it starts to isolate the items that match that description, even though I'm in the item code column. So I enter that item code, and then it fills in the description. Then, of course, we could add in the link that we talked about, and there's the picture of the item that we're buying, just like we saw previously. And if we wanted to add the link, we would just type in the URL for the website that we want to use, staples.ca. Because it's a stock item, notice a couple of things as well, that it comes with a unit cost assigned, and down at the bottom of the screen, we have the option to see the quantity on hand within location 1 and the quantity on hand for all locations. So we're sharing information that's vital to the purchase transaction so people know what's in the inventory system already and what's coming in on purchase orders that are part of Sage 300 and purchase requisitions that have yet to be converted into POs. And then we can continue to add items, but let me just show you quickly the non-inventory example. You notice that when I called up the item list, it's all stock items in the A1 category. But let's say Robert today would like to buy a new company car for himself, and he decides that he would like a new Jaguar. So as he's typing in that non-inventory item, you see there's nothing in our inventory database that matches Jaguar. But he can enter that into the system and then enter the fact that he wants a Jaguar F-Pace SUV. And because it's a non-inventory item, you notice there is no unit cost and nothing on hand. We could put in the link to the Jaguar website. We just want one of those, and it's going to be $50,000. So we would just simply enter that in, and then we can also enter in comments and instructions off to the far side here. And it notes the GL account that we're going to be posting this transaction to. And it will also pick up all of the taxes that are part of tax services within Sage 300 so that you don't have to know that. The system will automatically calculate the tax for you or enter the tax jurisdiction, and you can click Calculate Tax. Now, if you're making these purchase transactions on a regular basis, you can copy from a previous purchase requisition by going in and selecting one of the previous requisitions, saying OK, and it will automatically populate this information for you, so you don't have to keep entering manually every time you're purchasing the same items. And then if you want to attach documents, you would click on this page here, and you can add notes and say, I want to put in a picture of my Jaguar F-Pace SUV, and then browse to pick up a copy of that. So there's supporting documentation for the non-inventory item I would like to buy for myself today. And likewise, we do have the catalog that we have here, but let's say we couldn't find that in the catalog this time. So this is the new desk lamp, and I'm going to browse out to pick up a different kind of lamp that I'd like to buy, and I've scanned the picture of the item and I attach it this way. So I can have attachments for images. I could also have attachments for other details. So let's say, in addition to that document that I'm showing the Jaguar for, I might also want to add a general attachment for contract details that I'm going to record because of the nature of the transactions that I'm buying today, or the items that I'm buying today. So I might go back and look at the contract details and add that information here. And that's now part of the purchase requisition as well. We support different types of file formats, PDF, JPEG, Excel, Word, really doesn't matter. Any of those will work. And then if I was going to build out the quotation, I would put in quotation detail, insert, add a vendor, and start recording the details of the request for quote and enter in the price quotes that I get, the lead time that they give us, and any comments that we want to add. So all of that can be added in as quote details, and then send out a request for quote where I can email the information to a vendor contact and keep track of the vendors that are responding and what prices and lead times they're offering to us. So it's a very simple system to use, easy for users to train on. And if you use the quotation capability, you can set up the criteria for what makes a valid quote to ensure that you're complying with company policies. The last thing to note here is under the budget page, we can also incorporate GL account budget checking for the inventory and miscellaneous expense accounts that these transactions are being recorded against. And you'll see that there's a budget amount year to date, an actual amount for what's been expensed, pending amounts on previous purchase requisitions, and therefore what's available. You can also create your own item budget within Resource Manager. And if this was a PJC-based transaction, you could see the PJC budget or estimate as well. So you've got complete visibility around the controls that you want to incorporate as part of the decision process that you're making around these purchases. And you note that you can also import the transactions if you've got an electronic file. But what we want to do now is we want to submit this into the workflow, and notice the warnings that come up. If we've got budget controls built in, we can specify a warning notice to come up, which allows me to continue through. Or if I had put a error condition, then it would stop me from submitting this purchase transaction into the workflow. I could also force a higher level of approval automatically when I go over budget. These are all the various types of controls that I can build in. And now when I click on the approval audit trail, just as we saw previously, Robert has submitted it, and I'm going to need 2 levels of approval based on our approval workflow again, one by the supervisor for the inventory items, one for the division manager for the Jaguar, and then a final review and approval by the supervisor, which again will be Freddie. So let's go ahead and look at the approval process and how quickly and easily you can manage that. I'm going to log out as Robert and log in as Freddie. And when I log in, I will log into the same company. And this is where you see some of the management tools that are available. There's a manager console where a manager can click and see any type of transactions within the system that they have access to. And this is whether they're part of the approval process or not, which is another way that we provide visibility for managers in the organization to see what's going on. The to approve list, though, is specifically for those people that need to do approvals for the various types of documents or transactions that are being recorded in the system. So we're looking here at purchase requisition 41. There's the 2 items that Freddie needs to approve, because remember, it's the supervisor that's approving the stock inventory items within category A, and they can open up to see a picture of the desk lamp that Robert is purchasing, and they can check the budget if they want to see how that's affecting any of the budgets. And if they have comfort with that, then they can go ahead and approve and add their comments. So we'll just say OK, and that moves this along. But you notice that just one line item was approved, because I can approve these purchase requisitions at a line level or at a document level. So if it's at a line level, then we would approve line by line. So it's possible for us to approve one line of the requisition, but not another line. Next up would be Paul, who is the division manager. He was employee 1030, and he needs to log in and do the approval using the to approved list. There's purchase requisition 41. But let's say Paul was sick today and did not come into the office. How would we deal with that? Well, fortunately, Norming has an administrative portal that allows us to go in and go through the to-do list, which gives us an opportunity to deal with any outstanding approvals by company if you've got more than one Sage 300 company. And you notice there's requisition 41, which is supposed to be approved by Paul. So we could flag that and do the approval as a back office function. Or we could say, we know Paul is sick today, so let's flag the 2 purchase requisitions he's supposed to approve and transfer them to one of the other managers within the organization, such as Marilyn, and have Marilyn do the approval in this case. And so that's an ad hoc change to the approval workflow that you can manage through the administrative portal. And one of the other things that I'll highlight here while we're in the administrative portal is the schedules. Within Norming Resource Manager, you can create scheduled routines. So let's say on a weekly basis, I want to send out approval reminders to all of the managers, let's say Friday by 12 noon. we're going to send out an email notification to all of our managers to make sure their purchase transactions are getting approved on a timely basis so we can update costs to projects or just get those accruals set up properly for our purchase transactions. And we keep a history of that to make sure that we're tracking how often these approval reminders are going out. So these are ways that you can build in administrative controls and processes within Resource Manager to make it a truly integrated business management system. So here we go. Here's the Jaguar, and there's an attachment there so we can see a picture of that beautiful car that Robert's buying for himself. And we can go ahead and approve that with comments. Hey, please take me for a drive. Thanks. And now we've got an approved purchase around the new Jaguar SUV. But don't forget, because this was a fairly unique process, we still have one more level of approval, and that is Freddie's final overall approval now that Paul has reviewed the Jaguar purchase. So he would log in or use the mobile app, look at the to approve list, pick up the purchase requisition 41, and I'll highlight something else here. It's just the Jaguar because he's approved the inventory items. It's just the Jaguar that needs to be approved at that higher level. And if we click on the approval audit trail, you'll notice that every step in the process has been documented. So again, for Sarbanes-Oxley fans, we have a way of recording audit practices and being able to demonstrate how these purchases are being approved and by whom, and with a date and a timestamp, with any comments. And as an approver, Freddie can go back and see who's already reviewed and approved these transactions as part of the purchase requisition. So we're going to go ahead and approve this, say OK. And now, once we've got the fully approved transaction, what happens? Well, we've talked about the fact that we're fully integrated into Sage 300. So when we move back into the back office of Sage 300, you would expect to see this purchase transaction already set up within Sage 300 as PR41, and indeed you do. This transaction requires no rekeying, no import or export. It's already set up as part of the transactions now within Sage 300, because ultimately we're working from the same SQL database. There's no external database to manage and maintain. And there's the 3 items. The status is approved on all 3 items. The web link is here, a description with the quantity and the price. The taxes are calculated, the GL accounts that we're going to get posted to, and any comments that you've listed in here. They're all part of the transaction. The attachments that we added in the portal are also here and can be previewed as part of the back office. So you're not missing anything about what's been recorded within the web portal. The approval audit trail is here and documented within Sage 300. There's support for optional fields, taxes, and the requisition details. And if we wanted to review the budget, we could do so as well from the back office and incorporate budget control here. And notice that even though we've got the attachments here, if you want these attachments to move from the Resource Manager module up to other modules within Sage 300, then you would use the document management link. So this is where incorporating the additional document management link tool might come in handy for you, because you will see the transaction documents not just within the transaction screen of the requisition entry here, but you also see them attached here against the purchase requisition 41. All right. So that's how we incorporate additional document capability that will flow then from the Resource Manager module up into PO and up into AP. Now, if we're interested in generating the PO here, we would post. If you want to skip this step, you could also do that. This is just a way for you to get one final review from the finance team before we create the PO if there's any details that we want to incorporate. Now you notice there's an error message here We incorporated an email notification to the vendor so that when we create the PO, we automatically send the purchase order as an attachment to the vendor. And PO 70 has been created. And if we click on the trigger button, it will take us up to the PO entry within Sage 300. And there's the PO that's been created, PO 70, and the items that have been set up against that PO. Then we could add a copy of the PO that's been created in here. So if we had a PO 70, and I'm just going to rename this quickly, this would assume, of course, that we generated a PO transaction. We would add that and then be able to record the PO against the transaction in Sage 300. Now, if we go up to PO, the next step, of course, would be looking at the PO within Sage 300. And that's basically what we showed through the drill up. The purchase transaction is purchase 70. And now you need to decide, are we going to receive here within the back office of Sage 300, which you can do, or would you like to receive against that PO through the Norming Resource Manager portal? So by doing this, when we hit the receipt entry, the vendor was 2,800, and we picked up the PO 70 that was created, and we could receive all here. But if you want to add an approval process, which is why you would use Resource Manager, we would go back to the portal here, and we would log in as Robert. And we would pick up the PO receipt requisition now instead of PO. So under Procure to Pay, we could go PO receipt requisition, call up new, and it was vendor 2,800 and that PO 70. And it's got the items that we purchased and we could receive all here. And the only difference is that we're using the web to record the receipt and submit that into a workflow approval. If it's just a back office function for you, then you would do that receipt entry here in Sage 300. So it's the same information, whether it's within Sage 300 or in the portal. It's just a question of whether you want to add an approval workflow around that PO receipt. And of course, the same could be done for the PO invoice requisition. So that's how you manage the purchase process within Resource Manager to be able to automate it, add workflow approvals, create more visibility, streamline the process, and automate your supply chain with vendors and suppliers.